Hey guys, welcome to the session. Today we're going to learn about Angular. Myself, Raghavendra. Let's get started. Okay, what is Angular? Angular is a framework based on TypeScript language, and it's a single page application. That means, one single page, the entire page will not get refreshed for every small operation. Okay, and it's open source framework introduced by Google, and that's the reason it's very popular in market as of today. And the current version running in market is version 13. Okay, so what are building blocks of Angular? There are 8 building blocks of Angular: modules, components, templates, metadata, data binding, directives, service, and dependency injections. Yeah, so let's see the same diagram in the next slide. So this is what the diagram would look like. We have module component here, module service we have, the value and the functions, and we have a template sitting over here, and we have a component. For the same, we have a service which it's injected to the component, and in the bindings, we have property and event binding, which combines to make a two-way binding. And we also have directives and metadata. Okay, let's see all of them with examples. Okay, so I'll just bring my notepad here. So if you see, the same modules can be analyzed in Angular project would be like this. It's called as app module. If I open my project here, so I have a developer project for all of you. If I open this, I have an app module. This is the base module. I can say starter module for entire application. And next up, what we add is we add component. Okay. So let's get back to slides and continue. What and all we have. Now let's talk more about modules. What are these modules? These are the building blocks of Angular. So this is uses ng module as a decorator, and this is our metadata. And this is the module where we have the kind of starting point where our Angular application starts and it loads everything. We'll understand them in detail here. If you see this module, we have certain things in this module. We have import statements which will import the other components, or I can say modules, in the current module. So this, if you see, we have three modules likewise being imported to the current project, and we have certain components being imported to the components, this particular module, and we also have one directive. Okay, these are the multiple things what we import in the Angular. Okay, and also we have ng module. What is this? This is the decorator, and this is also, we call it as metadata. This is what this module file makes us. The moment we specify ng module in the file, that becomes a module. Okay, that becomes a starting point for Angular application. And we have declaration here. What this means, this is the file, sorry, this is the place where we contain all our components and directives. So if you see, I have application component, user component, types component, animation component. All these are the places where we like identify themselves in the UI. Okay, so and we have three import statements inside this ng module. This will let us know that how many modules currently I've imported apart from this current module. Okay, I have browser module imported, and I have routing module imported, and browser's animation module imported. And we have bootstrap here and providers. What this providers means, this is used to inject the services what we are trying to use in other components. Okay, what is that providers, what is the services, will come to that in a while. But for now, let's understand what is this bootstrap and what does that means to us. So what is bootstrap in this ng module decorator says is, this is the place where this module starts its building the entire application. If I go to app component from this location, this is what Angular loads in the first place. So every component have these four things in it, and this is a decorator which will make a file as a component. Okay, the moment we specify this decorator, this file becomes a component, and it's got four properties in it. One thing is selector. What is a selector? This will symbolize, identify this component in the UI. Okay, with this name we can use this anywhere else. And we have template URL. This is a HTML content for this component. And next up we have style URLs. We give CSS. For that we use style URLs. And finally we have providers. What providers means to us, let's say I've created some services where I can inject them. In this case, if I say customer service, I have as a service here. So I can inject that particular service in the component. And that's why we call it as dependency injection. So we are injecting the customer service in this component, right? So that is what this component file means. And next up, we'll go and understand what this HTML means. So if I write H1, welcome to Angular project. Okay. So how do I start the application? I need to say npm start. So we'll be learning in detail about installation in the next phase. So let's start the application. Okay, I have to manually go here in this location 4200. So this is what a project would look like. At this point, I'll comment this router outlet. So it refreshed, and this is the first page what we see here. Okay, this is the face of our entire component. Okay, this kind of represents us in the UI. Okay, so that's about module, and we discussed more information about the module, what it contains and what it represents here. Next up, the component. What does component says? Like I just mentioned, it says it is a piece of area where it occupies and represents itself with multiple data in it. For example, if I go to user component as an example, if you see here, I have users array in it, where I'm getting this users coming from. So let me launch this and show this demo to you. With that, I can explain all these things. I'll go back to my app component and I'll enable it back and I'll comment this out again. So I get this, I click on user page. See, now in my HTML, I have this button called as load users. What this means, the moment I click on this load users, it's present somewhere in the application. So load users is a button which will invoke this load users method in the application. So the moment I click on this button, it loads the user for me. Where it is loading from? It is loading from the backend. Okay. Here there is one more concept called as dependency injection. If you see here, this is the way I am injecting my dependency. Okay, we'll come to this in a while, but to understand this, a component will ideally contain business logic and also the content which are needed to load the UI. And this is the face of the component where we call it as template. And this contains the entire HTML contents here. So if I refresh, it will come back here. If I load, I get the users. Okay. So now let's get back to set and understand more about this. What is a component? Component controls the view portion of an application. In my case, if you already guys saw the users component, how it would look like. We define application logic to control the view. What is the view? Template. To control the view, the component uses certain APIs of properties and methods, right? The same example we have seen, user component, in that we had similar structure. If you see, I have a users array and I have a load users method, which would populate these users from a service. Okay. One more information about components are Angular creates, updates, destroys components as user moves through the application. Okay. So we have life cycle of Angular, wherein everything will come and go. We will see that also in detail in the upcoming sessions. That's a very huge topic to discuss. And next up, we have templates. Template is nothing but your HTML contents. If I go back to my demo, here, whatever you guys saw just now, these are the things which will be displayed in the UI for my component. So this is the component I have, user component. In this, user.component.html is the one file which will represent the template for this component. How? If you go here, it says template URL. Template URL points to this particular file. Either we can write the same content in the year itself with template, inline template also we can write. Otherwise, we can write template URL. All these things we'll be learning more in upcoming sessions. Okay, that's it about templates. Next up, we have metadata. Okay, what is metadata? Metadata means the decorators, the information about the actual data what we load. Let's say we have these three different metadata. These are decorators, component, ng module, injectable. Okay, if I have to talk about more on that, what this component ideally would look like, it has three information in it. Selector will identify itself in the UI, template URL, that is the HTML file which will have the content of this component, and we have style URL which will like style the entire component with the help of this file. That's what this component decorator means to us. And we already saw this ng module decorator. This will make the module to be the primary module for the application to start, wherein we specify about the declarations, what components we are including, and we specify about the modules, what modules are we are putting in, and we also inject some dependencies for this particular module, and to start with which component we are starting with. Okay, and we have injectable decorator. What this is used for? Let's say I create one service that where I'm injecting, where I'm used in, I can say provided in root component. We can provide any component, any module name here. At this point, I'm telling root. Okay, that means this is injected in the root module. That is the Angular module. This is also called as app module. This is actually called as app module, which we also call as root module in Angular. Okay, that's the intro about metadata. Next up, we have data binding. Okay, let's understand this in a better way. So we have 4 different types of data binding. So what are those? So first up, we have from the component, data will flow to DOM template. DOM or template, both are one and the same. What that means? So let's say I come here, come to the user array. I say title is equals to user component. I say here. I come to the user component. For now I'll comment all these things. No, I'll just put before everything else. I say h1. I use something called as interpolation, and I put this title here. Look at that where I put first. I created a title variable here for the same. I came to HTML and I put this h1 here, and I have mentioned it as title. I come back to the UI now. I'll comment this for now. Yeah. Okay. So we return this user component here. Let me modify the name of it. Demo interpolation. See, it got. Now the content data is flowing from component to DOM. This we call it as interpolation, right? That's one example for you. And next up, we have property binding. What is property binding? Now the data again flows from component to DOM. Now let's look at an example for this. I say disabled is equals to false. Now let me come to the UI and I'll create one input. Type is text. I say disabled is equals to, I will create some different name for that. Disabled flag, I say here. And I give disabled flag here. I create a paragraph and I say, please enter the name. Now, if I come back, see, at this point, it is false. I can type here, right? Now, I come back to my component here. I make it as true. I am disabling the component now. Look at this. Now I can't type. So what just you saw is the demo for property binding. That means we are modifying the one of the property of HTML input element. So disabled is a property of input element, and we are providing a disabled flag from user component to template. So now the data is flowing from component to DOM. That is your property binding. Likewise, we can do what we just did was attribute binding. We can do same thing for style binding and class binding. Okay. Now next up we have something called as event binding. Okay. So now what I'll do, I'll add one more button here. I will say button. Class would be btn primary. This is bootstrap. We'll see what and all those. I say click is equals to enable input. I say some name I'll give called as enable input, and I say toggle input field. Okay, all of them I'll put inside this container. Maybe it looks clean for us. I'll create this method back here next to this guy only. Now what I'm going to do, I'll take this dot, I'll just negate it. That's all. I will say toggle input field, maybe better name for this. I come back here, I give the same name here, and let's do this. Okay, if you see there is no break, I'll add a line break to make it look good. Okay. Now I'll click on this, it's enabled. I can type here, click on this, disabled. Now we can type it. So now what's happening? The data is flowing from the template to component back. That means you are performing an operation on HTML, and that's been propagated back to component, and that we call it as this toggle function. So what we're doing here, we are just toggling this disable flag here, right? This two-way the communication from HTML template to component. Earlier one was this disabled field was from component to HTML. So that is what we have called as event binding. And from these two, we have a combination, we call it as two-way data binding in Angular. Okay, how we can do this? Let me show an example for you. I'll just come here and I'll add one more input field, and I say ng model is equals to username. Okay, for this I have to include, there's a problem here. For this I have to include something called as forms module. Sorry, wrong place. Have to put it in imports. So now the error is gone, this error. Now this error is still there because there is no variable in the component. Now I'll create a variable, username. At the beginning, I'll keep it as empty. Okay. And here, maybe I'll put this in a div. I'll have a label here, username. I'll say user. Enter username. And now I'll put this model here. And after this, what I'm going to do, after this div, I'll use interpolation. You have entered username. I'll put this here. Okay, let's see this demo and I'll explain one more time to you after seeing the demo. Okay, let's forget about the styling for now. Now you see RAGHA, whatever I type here, you're seeing the result in the next line as it is. How this is happening? This is happening with the help of two-way binding. If you see, property binding is what? From component to DOM. Okay, and I'll just copy the entire thing. Event binding is what? From DOM template to back to component. The combination of these two is called as two-way binding. How it happens? With the help of ng model. You can consider this as banana in a box. Okay, you have to give this property here and say username. This variable now will be binding your component and model, sorry, component and template together. Whatever you save in this variable now goes to component and comes back to template. How? This variable initially was empty, if you see here, right? Whatever I entered came and save here. Now interpolation is from component to template. That's why we are getting this result from component to template. So that's the link. First, I'll refresh. First, I write R, it goes from template to component. That value gets saved in the component with username. And now with the help of interpolation, we are bringing it back to UI with the help of interpolation here. See, RAGHA, and RA. So these are three different ways of binding the data in Angular. We call them as two-way binding. There is one more advanced way of binding that's called as component binding. How we can bind different components together. There is a parent, there is a child. The communication goes from parent to child, and the communication coming back from child to parent. What is this? We'll see in upcoming classes. Okay. We have directives. What are directives? These directives make your entire UI dynamic. Okay, let's get to this. So we have covered all the points here: property binding, event binding, two-way binding, interpolation. Okay, now let's understand directives. What directives are? Directives makes, there are certain categories of directives. Okay, we will see that in action. One second. We have three types of directives. One is component directive. This is the one which makes the component as entire file as component. This is one way of directive. The other way we have is structural directives. We have ng if, ng for, ng if else. This will make your entire UI dynamic. And we have attribute directive. So we have this directive, which is kind of custom directive what we create, right? So we'll see the demo for one of them. Okay, So if you see my user component again, back again here, if you see here, I've made this ng if users is a array that is created here. If this array size, if it is equal to 0, then show this information. At this point, if I go back to my UI and refresh, this is empty. Users array is empty. That's why we are getting this two information here. Now you see what happens the moment I click on this. The moment I click on this, this will invoke load users method. Now, in this case, we are injecting customer service. We'll come to the dependency injection and services later. So we are loading the data from this service class. This provides a method called as get users that provides data for us, which we are consuming here. And that is being populated here. The moment it populates, this will go away because this is only true if this size is 0. The moment you click on the button, these two things will get vanished. And here, if you see the condition, next condition, I've used one more structural directive that is again ngif, and I call here users.length is greater than 0, then show this information. Yes, now my users array is filled with data. I am showing a table of information. If you see here, I'm using again for ng for. This is used to populate multiple values in an array. For each and every users, I am using for of loop here. So for every user in the users array, get that user and put all this information. Like I already explained, this is the interpolation. Index is a built-in variable for ng4. Okay, we will study about all these things in detail in upcoming classes. For now, I just want to show you what are this behavior and how it works for us. So I'm using this ng4 here, which will populate all these things for every data in the users array. See this, click, I get this data, and those two vanished, right? The button, because the condition what I gave was users dot length is 0. If it is 0, then do not show them. Okay, this is what we have. I have written one more structural directive here, and that is ng if here. If the status is false, my data comes with the status flag here. If it is false, I am showing this active, and it is otherwise I am showing it as block. See, this is something which we will be learning even more in detail when we look about structural directives in later point of time. Okay, that's about directives. You can create your own directives also. We'll see all of them in the upcoming classes. Services. This is very important. What are services? These are the classes which are used to perform a specified task, which are mostly used for API calls and passing data from one component to another component, or it is used to reuse the code for multiple components. Let's say you have user component, let's say you have home component. So if in this case, if you see in my user component, I'm injecting this user customer service. What is this I'm doing? This concept of putting the customer service here, we call it as dependency injection. Here, what we are doing, we are injecting the customer service here, and with the help of this, we are calling this get users method. As of now, I am creating a dummy data by myself. Ideally, this would be calling the backend service, get the data, and return the in the same JSON format. Okay, so it returns back to the users component, and user loads this array of objects, array of JavaScript objects. And the moment I load this ng if kicks in and ng4 kicks in, loads the data in the UI with all this data. Okay, that's what services providers. Now we can inject the same service in multiple other places. Maybe I can go to home component here. Okay, I can go here and I can say here private customer see I can use here also. I can create an array here also. I can say home users new array. This is of user type. Okay. And in this case, I can maybe show here also. I can show here. What is the variable name? Sorry for that. I use a pipe here. Okay. We have JSON pipe. We'll discuss that what it is. And I'll populate here this dot users is equals to customer service dot get users. That's it. Now, if I go back to the home page, home component, see, I have these data coming from backend. Okay. So that is the usage of services. It can be reused in multiple components. I'm using it in the home component also. If I go in users page, I can use it here also. The same data comes in a different format here. The same data comes in a different format here. That's totally on us how we can utilize that. But the use of services are we can reuse them in different places, different components. Okay, with that I already explained you the dependence injection. The same example I explained here with, let's say, injector in this my case is customer service. Where it was injected, it was actually injected in home component. This is home component, also got injected in users component. So what is dependency injection? Dependency injection is a way to supply instance of a service class and its output or whatever it gets from the backend, they can feed the data in the multiple components. And this is a very famous design pattern used across multiple frameworks in the market. Okay, what are pipes? Pipes means I've just used one of the pipe, JSON pipe. This is used to manipulate the content in the UI and show them in a different way. Okay, I'll show some examples here. Maybe I'll go back to first I'll explain the code. I have a pipes component here dedicatedly to explain about this topic. So if you see, I have a title called shopping cart and I have a date called today date. This will pick up the today's date as it is. Now, if I come to the component template, so this is what it is. I have uppercase pipe. This will the syntax for this. You have to use interpolation. Inside that, you have to use R character and then the pipe name. The pipe name is uppercase. This will convert this entire variable value to uppercase. And next up, we have lowercase pipe. This is used to convert the entire content into lowercase. And finally, date will be a very big one. Okay, I'll just show you actually what actual date is. So if I say paragraph actual date is, this is how typically it would look like. Now let's see the demo for this. See, today's date is so big. And the moment I convert this into the my format, date, month, and year, it is so simple. With the same today's date, I also can further pipe it to date, and I can further using the short time function, and I can manipulate it to further more different way. I can extract the current time also. Refresh 8:51. The current time is, see, like that. I can always use them to get the data. This is what your pipes are used for. Okay, it is used to manipulate the data and show it in a different format. Okay, the last topic for the day is your animations. What is this used for? This is used to make the user experience in a better way. And there are certain APIs which will provide us to do, which will help us to perform these operations. I can show one example for you guys, how we can leverage this. First of all, we need to import this browser animation module in the app module, and then I in our actual component class I have to import this animations, trigger, state, style, and stuff. And if I see here, I have a simple button, okay, and I'm modifying this with the toggle click animator here. This is a toggle click I have. If I come here, and this is what the trigger I have given in the button, and what that state currently I've given, the currently I've given the style for that is green and the state is true. So that would be going on sitting there. What that animation I'm giving, I'm telling that you convert it to red state when that operation happens. How? 1 second you take and modify it to the different color, that is your red color. We'll see how this works. What I actually mean, I'll just show you. If I go to animations, it's as of now green. That's what we're given here as green. And now I click on this toggle me. Look at that. Slowly it got converted to red. If I increase the time here, right, 2, and if I make it 2, now it will become 2 seconds. Click, slowly converts to red. Again click, slowly converts back to green. Okay, that is how you can use your animations in real time. This is a very simple example. Yes, this is an introduction, that's why I give a very simple example, but this can be leveraged. Let's say if I open some page, slowly I can bring them, or in a different format I can bring them. There are multiple ways I can actually use this. So that's the end of this particular session. Thank you so much for joining in.